Hello everybody! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura Nettles, and today we are discussing descriptions. So this topic has been requested by somebody, so here we go. I have 8 stories accepted into anthologies, and I just had my 3rd story on a podcast yesterday on the 16th of May, 2021. So that was really cool. So I have a little bit of experience, but nothing too major. So take all my advice with a grain of salt, but I will be reading excerpts of some of my short stories and flash fictions just to let you see a little bit of what I'm talking about. So when I read, I don't usually see things in my mind as I'm reading unless it's on the page. Like, what I see is what's painted in the prose. So it's a little bit like my day job. So I like special effects for movies, so usually it's monsters for monster movies. And when I open a scene, there's no light. It's completely black. And so when I start, I pull in lights and I start painting with light, and I let you see what I want you to see, hide and shadow what I don't want you to see, add some foggy atmospherics just to get some mood, get some rimming on those crazy teeth and bring your attention to where I want it, and things like that. So being able to paint with light has helped me to be able to paint with words. So I bring attention to what I want, leave out or hide what I don't want, and just let you guide you through the mood. So it's been a really fun ride of doing both. So my first piece of advice is describe the environment interacting with your character. Whether it be puffs of dirt from them stepping on a desert sand, or whether it be rain hitting the brim of a hat and pooling down in front of their line of sight so they can't see very well. Different things that interact with the characters so that you can describe what's going on around them without saying they were in a desert, but say like the arid sand plumed as his foot came into contact. I don't know, that one was a little lame, but like just describe through interacting with the main character. So here's my first example from my writing. This is from a short story called Laboratory. So, when she came to, she felt sore and strange, like she wasn't used to her body. What was her name again? She couldn't remember. Her arms were wrapped in silken bandages, sliding over slightly catching stitches beneath. A hard slab of metal underneath her was unyielding, grounding her with its discomfort. A harsh light was flooding through her eyelids, illuminating the blood coursing through them, tinting her world orange. She's alive! The words rang in her ears. Who was alive? Were they talking about her? Of course she was alive. But then, why did she feel so heavy and strange? The metal beneath her started to tilt, leveraging her into a standing position. The weight of her body shifted. She could feel her organs falling into place. Something was not right. So I like to go in describing the metal that she is laying on. It's hard and unyielding, the catching of the stitches on the bandages. She hasn't even opened her eyes, but it's everything she can feel and that she can hear. The light going through her eyelids, things like that. The next one is from my flash fiction called Carbogen. And it is, the squishy apparatus closed over her nose and mouth, her fate sealed along with it. A constant stream of the gas pressed at her thin lips and nostrils, eking for entrance. Its cool caress promised relief from her horrid past if only she would let it in. Let it do its job. Dark spots clouded her vision as she held on for autonomy, shaking her head back and forth to try and dislodge the clear plastic mask, to no avail. Lungs burned and her head felt light. The darkness was growing, absorbing her. Her lips parted of their own volition, and the gas rushed in, swirling down into her lungs. It raced in and dissipated in ripples across the lining of her organs, absorbed despite her prayers. She was consumed. So, describing the gas interacting with her face, the gas in the mask. So, just pressing at her lips and her nose, and then going in ripples across her organs once it's in her lungs. So things like that can be fun to help paint a picture and help you feel it a little bit. So another piece of advice is to play with light and shadows. So obviously, I'm a lighting artist. It's what I love. It was my one little tweak I wish they had done with Bunnicula, is add more play with shadows. But other than that, it was a great book. But anyway, play with shadows and light. So it could be light from candles, like in this small little section of my untitled story that I just started yesterday. The sharp shadows of the relics mounted to the wall seemed to dance with malice, the candle-lit chandelier refracting the light in shards upon them. The polished marble floor reflected it all back at him again, doubling the unease. So dancing shadows that have a hint of malice can definitely set the tone. Or it could be dancing jovially, like describe your light and your shadows and what mood and what tone that they are setting. So that's always fun. I also have a short story called Soot Scamp that just got accepted, and the main character has lived their whole life underground in a soot labyrinth, and they're not quite human. And on their level, their illumination comes from the bioluminescent purple moss. And now a crack has formed in the level of the labyrinth above him, and someone has fallen through. And they have a lantern, so he is very intrigued by this light that he is seeing, because it's the brightest thing he's ever seen in his life. Slowly his eyes began to adjust to the incessant light and blinding colors. It was some kind of bright illumination containing an array of scavenged chips of colored glass from broken bottles and other paraphernalia, splashing the walls with brilliant hues. Rebecca's face was cast in red, while the rest of her was in blue and yellow. So focus on things that they are not used to. So in this case, it was the light. So the colors and the brightness of the colors. He's very intrigued, and so I describe it reflecting off of the faceted obsidian tunnel later on, because of course he would focus on it. He's never seen it before. So when you describe experiences that characters are having, you need to filter it through the lens of what they themselves have experienced before. So are they making connections to certain things? Do they know certain things? Are they in complete confusion because they've never experienced anything like this before? So in my flash fiction, The Boy in the Wallpaper, I list certain stars and things, because in the beginning I go over the drapery around his bed has constellations on it. Constellations that he hasn't seen in years because of the grime on his window. And so obviously he knows these constellations, so when he starts listing them out in this section, he knows them, and they are familiar to him. He stopped just at the side of my bed, his dark, empty sockets endless, a beckoning abyss. "What do you see?" the boy intones. As I stare deep into the infinite pits, something glimmers back. Distant at first, but soon grows to fill my vision. Something writhing. I try to blink, but am frozen in place. With terror or rigor mortis, I cannot tell. The writhing widens, and I am consumed. Stars engulf me, the stars of my childhood when we would go to the summer cottage in the country and see the mountains and misty moors. The constellations leap out in recognizable patterns. Draco, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Virgo, and my favorite, Hercules. Their glow brings me comfort, yet I am drawing ever closer to them, falling into the heavens, past their burning orbs, into the deep darkness of space. My body loses feeling, expanding and freezing. I cannot breathe. There is no air to carry my scream. I try to reach my arm out, but there's nothing to grasp. There is no pull towards anything. I am stranded in the dark. So this experience is definitely filtered through his memory of being at the summer cottage and being able to see all the constellations and the stars, and the wonder that he felt then is now replaced with not being able to scream. So the contrast of the feeling of warm summers and now you're stuck in space. So along with going back to describing what you can hear or what you can feel, you can also focus on what you can taste, what you can smell, like use all the senses. And so in my example from my short story Danny's Tunnel, this poor little kid is possessed, and so he's in the backyard eating bugs, so this may gross you out. Spider after worm after cockroach he chomped, exoskeletons exploding between his teeth as their innards oozed over his tongue, like chunky honey. He needed more. Handful after fistful he gorged on them until he threw up and started over. So the feel and the taste definitely heightened the idea of this possession is not good. Oh my gosh, please help this child. So in the Anatomy of Prose, Sasha Black says the best descriptions deepen characterization and allow readers to experience the characters' emotions themselves. And so one way I have found to do this is use some of my own experiences and give those experiences to my main characters so I can draw on them with these descriptions. So in my untitled one that I'm working on right now, is the rain was not the only thing reaching for young Edward. If he turned his head just right, long black fingers could be seen wrapped around the edges of the carriage window, clinging along for the ride. They were not quite human, with their too many joints. Heartbeat in his ears, Edward kept those appendages in sight. As long as they were there, he knew where they were. It was more terrifying to not know their exact location. Like when a spider crawls under the quilt. Everything feels phantom tingles, whether the arachnid is really on skin or not. So that was based off of me back at home at my parents' house, reading a book in bed, putting the book down and seeing a spider on the quilt, and then the spider was gone and it was under my quilt and it was like, no! So just, you can feel his sense of dread of like, okay, yes it's icky, but it's worse to not know where it is. So having that relatable experience, even though we've never seen fingers with too many joints around a carriage window, we do know the spider feeling. And so we are able to connect with it a bit more. The next one is don't label emotions, show them. So don't say, she was nervous. Instead, I said, the monotone drone of the revered psychotherapist washed over her, not easing her racing pulse or sweating palms in the slightest. That was from Carbogen. So instead of saying she was nervous, I try and describe the feelings. So things like the emotional thesaurus can help give you what the body does in response to certain feelings. So it can help you figure out what exactly your character is actually doing and going through, instead of just labeling it. Because everybody feels things differently. The next one is strengthen descriptions through word choice. So use strong verbs and adjectives. It's so fun just trying to use the strongest words possible and the fewest words possible to make things flash fiction. So you have to definitely hone your craft to keep things as concise as possible but still paint the most vivid picture. So in my story Twisted Recovery, I said the ship rocketed towards the nearest inhabited planet 5 weeks away. Deep in the metallic bowels, blood splattered the table Lisa was strapped to as a gooey, writhing mass of alien spawn was removed from her intestines. Screams had echoed through the hollow, streamlined hallways as the laser cut and cauterized into her flesh, revealing the pussy pupa. There had been no time for anesthesia. So things like gooey and writhing and alien spawn, and metallic bowels. Just use fun descriptions that let you feel something, like metallic bowels instead of deep in the spaceship. But like bowels parallels her own bowels that are being getting surgery put on them. So find words that can parallel, find words that can elicit emotion, use stronger verbs. So instead of saying a hard hit, you could say it's smashed. Things like that, it's smashed into. So things that give a stronger emotion, a more vivid picture, is really important. My next little example is from that same story, Twisted Recovery. Meat rent and flew in every direction, caked under Lisa's nails. Thick femurs, delicate metacarpals, and large plates of the skull passed through her teeth, grinding and splintering them into bite-sized shards. Their pops and crunches were music to her ears. The scrape of them across her twisting tongue was ecstasy. So trying to use stronger words and visceral words like pops and crunches and ecstasy instead of nice. Just things that are stronger. Meat rent and flew. So it gives you a visual of meat flying in every direction as she dissects this person that she just killed. And my last suggestion for this video is vary sentence length. So sprinkle short punchy ones in for emotional impact. So in my Boy in the Wallpaper, there's a lot of lengthier sentences because this is set in the Victorian era, and so the main character has a kind of sophisticated vocabulary and uses more old-timey contemplative words. And so here is my little section. The creature of the void who pretends to be merely a pattern on the jovial old wallpaper of playing boys and girls will reveal himself once more. He had terrified me as a child, his eyes not seeming to line up with the rest of him, the only mismatch in the print. In nightmares he had whispered to me, calling me by name. I am ready to meet him, this time in wakefulness. The room breathes. So just little things like the room breathes gives you time to breathe between the long sentences and feel like, oh, something's gonna happen. So in my Twisted Recovery, I have a confrontation with a medical doctor, and then the next one sentence paragraph is her bones shifted. And then her bones start like shifting and like slicing out and murdering him. So just these small little one sentence paragraphs with their short punchy sentences allows the reader to breathe, and it's like a little micro cliffhanger, and so it gets them excited and it increases the feeling of danger, and they're really fun. So that's my little video on how to better your descriptions. So things like playing with light and shadow, short punchy sentences that are like little micro cliffhangers, being able to use the 5 senses, this helps if I can talk, and describe how things, not always just how they look, because sometimes just using sight all the time can wear thin and it's just like, okay, whatever. But it's nice to be able to feel, to smell, to touch. These things ground you and help make the world feel more fleshed out, and also help you to be able to just have much more powerful descriptions. Also, filtering through your main character's memories or experiences to make connections can also be helpful to show rather than tell. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. I would love to just see what you guys think. If you guys have any other suggestions, because we can all improve. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming along, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!